Welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from a Frontier. Thank you kindly for stopping by. I am grateful. We've uploaded His Excellency Jacques Peterlou's Mind Speak from last Saturday. Do have a look at it. Of course, he said many things, but the thing that stuck in my mind was Kenya should have a GDP of 15% a year. It should be taking off like a rocket. He said many things. He's exiting. He's going to be the Director General of the Directorate for Resources within the Federal Department of Foreign Affairs in Bern. So basically in charge of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, all the embassies, the security, financing, and I wish him all the best. I'd like to thank Al Jazeera's Dareen Abu Gheda for having me on Inside Story yesterday on Al Jazeera. We were talking about BRICS, building BRICS' influence, and it was a very interesting discussion we had as well, and I'm grateful to her for that. That link is on Rich Wrap-Ups if you care to take a look. Whilst I was visiting the bureau, they've moved to Upper Hill, and they've got this fabulous top floor on this building. I took a photograph of this new UAP skyscraper that's going up in Upper Hill, and everyone caught everyone's attention. Macro thoughts, as I wrote on the weekend, and I spoke about this also on Al Jazeera. The bull market in China is now being mauled by the bears. I said, consider that there are more individual investors in the Chinese stock market than there are Communist Party members, and you will appreciate that the stock market crash represents probably the biggest political risk to the neo-totalitarian Xi Jinping. I'll put up a photograph that Quartz tweeted, and they created that characterization, neo-totalitarian, which I think is remarkably good. And their tweet on July 3rd is Xi Jinping has run into the one thing in China he can't control. Holger tweeted, Chinese stocks crash as intervention fails to stop the rout, credibility of Communist Party at stake, which is essentially the point I was making. And then Zero Hedge tweeted, traders with hands on their faces. And, so clearly we've got a situation that's developed here, I think this is probably the biggest clear and present danger to Xi Jinping, how this is handled and how it falls out. Whose fallout it looks like it will. Patrick McGee, the turmoil spreads, China iron ore futures fall 8% to record low, and that's sent the Aussie dollar tumbling again as well. Home thoughts. I took this photograph as well from the Al Jazeera Bureau of the Ngong Hills, seen from the 10th floor of their office in Upper Hill. And that took me back to Karen Blixen's famous I Had a Farm in Africa at the foot of the Ngong Hills. The equator runs across these highlands 100 miles to the north, and the farm lay at an altitude of over 6,000 feet. In the daytime you felt that you had got high up, near to the sun, but the early mornings and evenings were limped and restful, and the nights were cold, she says. And one of my favourite passages from that book Out of Africa, page 196, describing a time of year that we are now in here in Nairobi. Cold, wintry, a little bit misty in the mornings. The early morning air of the African highlands is of such a tangible coldness and freshness that time after time the same fancy there comes back to you. You are not on earth, but in deep, dark waters, going ahead along the bottom of the sea. It is not even certain that you are moving at all. The flows of chilliness against your face may be the deep-sea currents, and your car, like some sluggish electric fish, may be sitting steadily upon the bottom of the sea, staring in front of her with the glaring eyes of her lamps and letting the submarine life pass by here. The stars are so large because they are not real stars, but reflections, shimmering upon the surface of the water, alongside your path on the sea bottom. Live things darker than their surroundings keep on appearing, jumping up and sweeping into the long grass as crabs and beach fleas will make their way into the sand. The lights get clearer, and about sunrise the sea bottom lifts itself towards the surface, a new created island. Whirls of smells drift quickly past you, fresh, rank smells of the olive bushes, the brine scent of burnt grass, and a sudden quelling smell of decay. The little one, Hannah, is such a peach, and now she has these little golden retriever puppies. She is having an absolute ball. Political reflections, let me start with the fact that Carnival, which is the cruise company, is aiming to launch Miami to Cuba cruises in May. I'll put up a photograph of that. Iran nuclear talks have been extended. Source says 48 hours left for deal. So down to the wire. And Le Monde tweeted this photograph of all the negotiators in a room. I went back to Zbigniew Brzezinski, who tweeted on July the 4th, as the Middle East grows increasingly chaotic, he said, it's smarter to increase stability, not reduce it. A deal with Iran is better than no deal. And he, of course, does have POTUS's ear. He is a foreign policy eminence grise with the president's ear. And of course, he was the architect of Russia's defeat in Afghanistan. And he said this, which I like: the three grand imperatives of imperial geostrategy are to prevent collusion and maintain security dependence among the vassals, keep tributaries pliant and protected, and keep the barbarians from coming together. Interesting guest post on a site called Jihadology. The slick production techniques ISIS uses in its propaganda are the reason people have written about their videos as Hollywood quality or like Hollywood movies. Obviously, this is not strictly speaking true. When people write about ISIS videos being like Hollywood action films, they don't mean that in a literal sense. Hollywood blockbusters, after all, cost on average several hundreds of millions of dollars to produce, but that doesn't mean people saying that aren't on to something. They're seeing something in ISIS videos that is reminiscent of Hollywood films that they don't see in the videos of other groups. Yes, ISIS videos are of far higher quality than are those of other groups. We would say they are technically a generation ahead of most others. But there's something else going on here that people are queuing on. We would argue that visually, ISIS videos mimic what could be called a Hollywood visual style. And that is being done so systematically and carefully that while it's entirely possible that it's accidental, we find that very unlikely. It takes me back to something I found in September 2012, and it was called one of the defining bifurcations of the future will be the conflict between information masters and information victims. This information warfare will not be couched in the rationale of geopolitics, but will be spawned like any Hollywood drama out of raw emotions, hatred, jealousy, greed, emotions rather than strategy, will set the terms of information warfare struggles. And you'll recall that image I put up of IS with those very young children doing the executions in Palmyra, and it reminded me of Nuremberg. And I've been talking about this for a while, actually. It's quite extraordinary, their ability to propagandize that effectively. Euro, let's move on to the markets now. As I said on the 6th of July, either way, I think this European project is unraveling now. Euro, and I think we'll be left with a rump, which will be Germany. Netherlands and all the hardcore countries, and I think over time, gradually, we're going to see that the others are going to be squeezed out. Currency markets, euro has bounced a little bit to 110.40, dollar index around the 96.50 level. Japanese yen 121.72, quite a big move there. Swissy 0.9439, the pound is at 154.30. Aussie, when I checked last, let me check right now, is 0.7401. And of course, it's actually dropped for 6 days in a row. Iron ore is in a bear market. India rupee 63.65, South Korean won 1137.21, weak. Brazilian real weak 318.54, Egyptian pound really in trouble 783.01, and the rand coming towards this 1260.65 level is currently at 1253 and under pressure. Dollar index, I'll put up a 3-month chart. I think that's going to 100 and then 110. You know, we might not get a rate hike now given the volatility we're seeing in the world this year, but nevertheless, I think we're going to continue to see a sort of safe haven trade into the dollar, Swiss franc, Japanese yen, that kind of thing. Holger, euro again below 110, but it's bounced back above it now. That was earlier in the morning. Angela Merkel said Tuesday she's not especially optimistic. European Commission President Jean-Claude Juncker said an exit scenario has been prepared in detail. 3-month implied volatility, a measure of anticipated price swings in the euro-dollar, rose for a 4th day. The gauge climbed to 12.31%, the highest on a closing basis in 3 years. Put up a 1-year gold chart. We're now at 11.53. I think we're going to see a triple-digit print in 2015, and I said this severally. Crude oil all over the place. Currently trading around the US light crude just above $52. I think it's going to $44, especially if Iran comes on stream. There was a very big sell-off yesterday and then a rebound, and Nanex, of course, captured that. Check out the turnaround in energy futures today, he tweeted. I'll put up that image. David Stendal, copper down 7.01% for the week. That's the Zambia kwacha for you. It's going to come under pressure. Smithsonian is saying we're running out of chocolate. We're in the midst of a global chocolate shortage, and it's only predicted to get worse, the Washington Post reports. This panic-inducing scarcity has actually been going on for a while. Last year, for example, humans consumed 70,000 metric tons more cocoa than farmers produced. By 2030, chocolate makers told the Post the deficit could reach 2 million metric tons. What in the world are we doing wrong here? The Post cites a few factors. Firstly, we're eating more chocolate than ever before, especially in growing markets such as China. Our taste for dark chocolate is also on the rise, which is problematic since it contains up to 7 times the amount of cocoa found in milk chocolate. I didn't know that. Let's move on to Africa. I did a radio interview with the BBC, and they were asking about the potential knock-on spillover effects of the Greece crisis and Africa. I think I was a little bit too strident, but you know, sometimes you get concerned about something in particular. Do have a listen. And I'd already spoken about this sub-Saharan African currency bloodbath in a piece I wrote on the 8th of June. I'll put that link up as well. The Burundian opposition has rejected Museveni as a mediator on this crisis. Museveni has been in power since 1986. Can he help the Burundian president to understand that a mandate limit is important? No, said Frederick Bamvuginyumvira, deputy leader of the Front for Democracy in Burundi. I expect nothing from his work, he said. The IFC tweeted, in 24 years, Malawi's average per capita income increased by only $70, from $180 in 1990 to $250 in 2014. At $250, while Monaco is the highest at more than $100,000, more than 400 times per person on average than Malawi. Interesting report, have a look at it. The World Bank press release is on the website if you care to take a look. South Africa's business confidence has fallen to a 16-year low, and I touched on this previously. There was another report that was saying a similar thing. Fell 2.3 index points in June to its lowest in more than 16 years. Goodness. South African all share fell very sharply yesterday, down 2.69%, and is now at a 23rd of January 2015 low. Dollar rand around the 12.50 level. I'll put up a 6-month chart. I think it's going to 14. Egyptian pound has fallen lately, losing ground very quickly now at 7.83. The Egyptian EGX 30 has also been falling sharply. That's now down 13.15% year to date and at 15-month lows. The Nigerian all share is down 6.57% year to date and at 13.5-week lows. The Ghana Stock Composite Index is up 3.75%, but all of that's been eroded because of the SEDI. I like this photograph of the sun rising over Lake Asale, salt traders nearing the end of their 3-day trek from the nearest town of Mekele. Let's go to Uganda, where the Daily Monitor is reporting defending the shilling is unsustainable, central bank governor. And I said he's admitting that the shilling is being buffeted by forces beyond his control. He wants to conserve his hard currency and not burn it up, defending the indefensible. The currency has slumped 27% this year. Put up a photograph of the central bank governor. Coming to Kenya, Kenya's central bank announces surprise rate hike to 11.5%. Caught most people off guard, including myself, given that, you know, the proximity of the previous rate hike. Excuse me. 150 basis point increase last month to 10%. They've now hiked another 150 to 11.5%. The shilling had weakened to a 3.5-year low, more than 100. I don't think this rate hike is going to help, I'm afraid, because I think we've now moved to mass risk aversion in the markets, where people are more worried about their principal and getting that back than any interest return. But we're nearing a 107. I think that's going to operate like a magnet, and we're going head to head there. Monetary Policy Committee noted elevated risk to the inflation outlook, mainly attributed to pressures on the exchange rate over the last few months, it said. I said he's nailing his colours to the mast. The economy, however, is not firing on all cylinders, and a further interest rate hike, which you just had transmitted through the economy, is going to slow down things, I said. Razia Khan said the move established his hawkish credentials. It is an ahead of the curve trade, but however, I think, you know, it's a very sensitive situation. I think this rate hike was informed by a weak shilling. Not sure that it's going to have the desired response, and I think it's going to slow down the economy considerably. Kenya's Safaricom might have to spin off M-Pesa, the world's largest mobile money business. This is a report in Quartz. Kenyan government is introducing new regulations this week in Parliament that could lead to the breakup of Safaricom. Fred Matiang'i, the Cabinet Secretary at the Ministry of Information, suggested that this is part of an effort to protect against monopolies. Telecommunication firms need to be regulated to ensure some players are not strangled, he said. If the new regulations pass Parliament, Safaricom could be forced to separate its mobile money unit M-Pesa from its mobile phone services, voice and data, and infrastructure businesses, potentially weakening its position in the market. And it will mean victory for its rival Airtel, which has long argued that Safaricom's dominance is anti-competitive. Last year, the CAK, Communications Authority of Kenya, ordered Safaricom to allow its mobile money agents to host services from other operators who until then had refused to do so. Safaricom boasts 20 million subscribers on its M-Pesa platform, and largely built on the back of its 83,000 agents, which is, I suppose, their unique advantage, which they're now being asked to share. Safaricom is crushing its competition in Kenya, leading all segments of the market: voice 75.6%, SMS 93%, mobile data 70%, mobile money 66.7%, according to Business Daily. Bob Collymore says it is unfair to punish someone just because they have a high market share. I agree with him. A high market share does not mean abuse of dominance, but rather it is a process of sound business management and independent customers' choices. Safaricom announced $320 million annual profit, up 38% from the previous year. 87% of the country's $55 billion GDP passed through M-Pesa in 2014. Look, my view is this: it's a phenomenon, and I think it represents an egregious tilting of the pitch by the government. I think it's really a silly policy to penalize success, and I think if push comes to shove, Safaricom should spin it off and probably create a substantial business where they can extract value from the stock exchange. 1,153 days ago, I took a photograph of an M-Pesa operation opposite Bob's office, and I said on my tweet, M-Pesa the jewel in the Safaricom crown. I did an interview earlier this year with Bob after the full year results. If you haven't had a look at that, please do have a look at it, because we've covered many of these subjects. It's up 16.37% year to date, considerably outperforming the all share, which is in negative territory but less than 1%, so a big margin of outperformance. And just to take you through some numbers, M-Pesa customers at the time of those results active in the last 30 days was 13.86 million. Revenue went up 22.8% year on year, and represents 20% of total revenue of Safaricom. So, you know, a big beast. Uchumi takes additional 500 million shillings debt from KCB Group. They have also said they're going to close some outlets in their recovery bid. We made an attempt to expand faster than our capabilities, and we will be taking a pit stop in terms of branch and country expansion, Sam Odor told an investor briefing. And they are also going to sell 20 acres in Kasarani, valued at 2.2 billion shillings, which is expected to make them debt-free, subject to an audit, where they estimate the losses are in the range of a little bit over that. There's a link for Uchumi's share price data if you go to have a look at that. The Kenya shilling, when I looked last, was 100.292. I'm bearish. I think we're going to 107. Shilling has dropped 9.9% against the dollar this year, breached 100 on Monday for the first time in more than 3.5 years. Nairobi all shares minus 0.785% year to date, and 0.09% above 2015 low from the 28th of May. The NSE 20 is down 5.816% in 2015, but has rallied 70.62 points since the 10th of June, when it closed at a multi-year low. Crime in Nairobi has grown by 80%, shows data from the Nation Newsplex project in partnership with the Institute of Economic Affairs. The Nation Newsplex investigation found that this trend is masked by the overall trend of the national crime rate, which fell by 6% in 2014 to an estimated 69,376 incidents, its lowest level in 5 years. Although the number of violent crimes reported have been rising, the rate of violent crime has been falling. This is explained by a higher population growth rate than the growth in the number of reported violent crimes. Kenya Airways is insisting that the government has no plans to cede control of its 29% stake in a shareholding to a Gulf state. You will recall on the 13th of April I said we need to speak with the big Gulf carriers like Emirates and Etihad to see how we can get them to take a stake, because they are proven operators who prima facie understand the airline business, I said. There's a link for Kenya Airways' share price data if you go to have a look at it. KCB rebounded 2.75% yesterday in a strong rebound, and Standard Chartered has rallied 5.68% since the 1st of July, when the market learned they were requesting a split in their shares. Once again, I appreciate your support. Thank you so much.